Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And today we have a very special guest, one of the co stars of Netflix's The Umbrella Academy, Ken Hall. Ken, thank you so much for being here with us. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, John. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I've been looking forward to this. So let's just get right to it.
Let's do it.
You are an award winning comedian. Did you start? How did you start out? Did you start out doing stand up and then you got into acting? How did your career take off?
Yeah, it was. I kind of found it a bit later in life. I quit drinking when I was 28. I didn't really do much in my 20s. I played drums in a punk band, but didn't really have any particular skills or talents and abilities. And so when I quit drinking, when I was about 28 or so, I started this process of really trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. And I took a couple of years of creative writing, night school classes, and it was actually around that time I realized that I was actually a creative person. I had no idea. And it was really cool that I was stepping way outside of my comfort zone and what was familiar. And I stumbled upon a beginner's acting class through the Toronto District School Board here in Toronto to do a night school class, like a beginner's drama
Yeah.
night school class. And it was terrifying. I was like, because it was so unfamiliar to me. It was so not how I had seen myself
Mm-hmm.
for so long, and to make that decision to step way outside of go out on that limb and try something new was a really big risk. And I realized since then, this idea of taking risks is really important. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that that's it works so well in comedy, but it also, the rules of comedy actually, and the rules of improv in particular, because after taking that first drama class, I was hooked. Pretty much literally the first class.
Mm-hmm.
Within the 3 hours, I'm like, this is it. This is a huge part of what I felt had been missing in my life. And it just felt kind of natural for me. It made sense and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And my life hadn't been fun in quite a while
Yeah.
since I was a kid, really. It was just kind of like, let's just get through life, let's just survive it. But in actuality, finding this beginner drama class and then improv classes at the Second City here in Toronto, things started to really fall into place. I would say fairly quickly, to be honest. I realized early on, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been so afraid of trying things. I've been so afraid of going outside of my comfort zone, just trying to stick with what I know,
Uh-huh.
that I was so unhappy. And that's why it was such an amazing, eye-opening experience where became like it was like my world was black and white, and then I found improv, and then it turned into like IMAX and surround sound
And
and everything. And I loved it, and I just really took to it, and it felt very natural. And I love the people associated with that. So I have done stand up. I've maybe done it about 20 times, but that came years later.
okay.
For me, what got my start was doing improv classes, and I just recommend improv for everyone. Doesn't mean that you're going to be a performer, but it just opens you up as a person, and I think that it can really begin to um, sort of showcase more of your personality and connecting with other people and shifting your mindset from cynicism perhaps, or being closed-minded or being negative, into just saying yes and being open to things.
and when you started doing improv, did you discover a whole side to yourself that you never knew existed?
Yeah, it was well, it's funny you mentioned that, because once I started doing it, I realized and recognized that I had these qualities when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and with people that I felt really comfortable with, which weren't a lot of people back. As I said, I had so much fear and anxiety, and never felt like I fit in this world, and hard, social anxiety, like hard to talk to people even. But like I have an older brother and certain friends that I would open up to and feel very comfortable with. So when I was doing improv, it kind of flashed back to these moments of like, oh yeah, that's what it's like to play pretend,
Yeah.
and that's what it's just like to feel free in those moments. I think that's why so many adults find it later in life, and they're because
Yeah.
they've forgotten how to play, and they've disconnected from a younger part of themselves because they're so driven on, within more of a North American context of like acquiring material wealth, status, all of these things that appear to be important, but the little kid, that still wants to play, that still wants to be silly, that kind of gets put on the shelf,
Absolutely.
forgotten about. And
Uh,
so for me, that's what I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like how I felt when I was a kid. And maybe that's why I love it so much, because I'm like, I'm making up for some lost time.
and you're a natural at it. I mean, you're just an extremely funny person to watch on the screen.
Thank
Um,
you.
you are very open. I have to mention this about your height. You mentioned
Hmm.
that on your social media.
Hmm.
You embrace it, which I think is wonderful. Uh, when
Thank
you were
you.
starting as an actor, did you feel that were you afraid that your height was sort of gonna put you in a box and only allow you to play certain roles that you might not be happy with?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's always there. I mean, and I appreciate you sharing that because I can't hide my height. You
Yeah,
know, I'm 4'7 3/4. There is no denying I am small. Like there's just no denying that. And that's one of the things that obviously, when you meet me in person, it's like, wow, like what's going on? You're so tiny, man. Like, and but then, I'm learned to live with that, and in a weird way, finding film and TV and improv in particular was a way to begin to sidestep it, which initially something that I felt incredibly self-conscious about, and a lot of shame and a lot of like sadness and loneliness based on the fact that I am physically different than many people in this world. And people with differences, quote unquote differences, it's we don't really see that necessarily reflected in on screens, and
yeah.
it's all of those things that, especially for short men as well, we're made fun of quite often, and I was very cognizant of that. So to go back to your question of like, and I kind of experienced this, to be honest, of things that roles that I would get cast in quite often. I'm like, man, I've done so many elf roles. Like, I know that I know that really well. I
Hmm.
know that territory, and I'm good at it. I can do it. And I have my first few gigs were on a couple of shows called Freak Encounters and Scare Tactics, which was actually playing monsters.
Wow.
It's like reality TV shows where friends and family
Yeah.
like put each other up to get to get terrified, basically. So I'd often be the monsters that would jump out at the end of the night after their height, after their fear has been like built up to a crescendo, and I make that reveal, and I really loved it. Actually, it was really fun. I felt kind of guilty because I'm like, I don't want to hurt people. I want to scare them, but I don't want to scare them too well, because I don't want them to like have trauma based on that. But it was, and I've seen this in my improv, and I've seen this throughout my performative experience. I've been doing improv for about 17, 18 years now, and my height, my physicality, I wouldn't even say my height is my physicality. It's how I am in my body, and how I love moving in my body, and how I just am what I am undeniably. So instead of trying to fight it, I'm just trying to, I'm just accepting what is there
Embrace it.
and playing with what is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not even, I'm not even consciously like that raw, like just I gotta embrace and empower, power of positive thought. I just am, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
it's just,
Yeah.
and it's a hard road, and I've had this. My agent is really great. I've only had one agent my whole life for, gosh, I think 12 years now, and that's part of our conversation. I've had to have that conversation with her, and she's been very open about it. Of like, if there's any roles that she sends me out for that I don't like, that are not that see my height as more as a punchline
Yeah.
rather than actually see me as a comedic actor and what I can bring to the table. So there's been not a lot, to be honest, where I've turned things down, where I'm like, that doesn't feel good for me. Um, and now I'm at a place where I'm like, oh, I'm being seen, I hope, more for the acting skills that I bring to the table,
Hmm.
more of my comedy chops,
Absolutely.
and I think I think I've kind of proved myself that
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
people are
Without a
so much.
doubt.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and people are so much more than what you just see on the surface level,
Oh yeah.
uh, and so yeah, it is being it's part of that, and I still see that showing up
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
from time to time, but I am what I am, and I just like,
We all are
great,
what we are. We can't change it,
there
really.
you go,
So
there
let's
you go,
go now into the Umbrella Academy, all right?
right.
Very popular Netflix show. It recently aired its third season. You
Mm-hmm.
play Herb. And in the this season that just ended, you also played Pogo's body as well. So,
Yeah, and I did that right from season one. I actually started on Umbrella Academy playing the body of Pogo.
oh,
That was my first initial, introduction to that world. And I'd done a lot of prosthetic work in my life. I was on a show called People of Earth where I played this gray-headed alien. And as I said, those shows of like Scare Tactics and Freak Encounters many, many years ago when I first started. So this was a real cool experience
oh
to
yeah.
physicalize like chimpanzee and yet very human-like and yet old at the same time. So it was quite a few balls that I was juggling.
I gotta mention, I love your IMDb profile photo. I
Oh,
love
great!
that
Thanks, man.
photo. So when when the Umbrella Academy opportunity came your way, what did
Hmm.
you know about it? Because its origins do come from a comic book.
Yeah.
And what did you know about Herb, the character, if anything at all?
Well, Herb wasn't in. Herb's not in the graphic novel. This actually. So when I first got the gig, thankfully there's like, oh, there's a graphic novel I can actually read and and understand more of this world. And it's written by Gerard Way, the lead singer of My Chemical Romance, and it was great. That was a good foundation to introduce myself to the world. And Herb came later on. Herb came. We were shooting season one for about 6 months here in Toronto, and the offer to play Herb, I think, came about maybe 3 months into it.
Mm-hmm.
And production had reached out to my agent, and my agent called me. She's like, "Ken, production just called me. They're very curious if you just want to. It's a very small role, but would you like to play a person?" I'm like, "I would love to play a person. Absolutely, sign me up." And it was a very small role. It was episode 6. I think there's just one or two scenes, just maybe a few lines, if that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember after I shot the Herb stuff, which was so fun. I really connected with Herb. I'm like, this is me. This is just an exaggerated version of me. I I was talking with Steve Blackman, the showrunner, and he was just saying how much he loved it. He was like, yeah, like what you did, even if it was a few lines. He said it was laugh out loud funny,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, oh, thank you very much. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I'm more. Pogo is not written to be like comedic necessarily, so but Herb is, and I love like trying to find more comedy in both the comedy and the heart that Herb is. So we saw a little bit of Herb in season one, and then going into season two, the producers were like, "We got some big ideas for Herb this season." I'm like, "All right,
Oh
let's
yeah.
do it." And sure enough, we did. It was just a really great experience.
What makes Herb so funny is not so much the dialogue, which is funny
Hmm.
when it does happen, but it's the way you move. It's Herb's action. Now, for
Mm.
people that don't know, the Umbrella Academy is it's a time travel show on Netflix. To sort of simplify it, Herb works for what's called the Commission. The
Hmm.
Commission is what oversees time travel to make sure that events that are
Hmm.
supposed to happen in history, no matter how horrific they are,
Hmm.
happen.
Hmm.
Would you describe Herb as, when it comes to his job at the commission, as a
Hmm.
company man? Doesn't want to stir
Hmm.
any waves, just wants to keep his head down.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, yes. I think but he also, I feel like, and I think a lot of people have this kind of quality as well, where you do your task, you do what's asked of you, and then there's moments where that you rise above that. That
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like embracing a bit of an inner hero. That you're destined for more in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. So I think Herb is lovely because I think he's like really good at his job. I think he really cares about his job, and I think he cares about other people as well. So I love that part of the humanity, and the fact that he the, and in first season two, I think he was written to be not that great. Like he was like not that I think he was kind of struggling, to do his job. Or certainly the handler, Kate Walsh's
Yeah,
character, was very hard on him, and
that's an
which
understatement.
yeah, that is an understatement, actually. That's but yeah, I feel like Herb has this greater calling in finding maybe a more of an inner strength. I think that we all possess, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, would you say over your time, over your appearances over 3 seasons, that you've managed to make Herb your own?
Oh yeah, very much so. And I got to say too, I mean, they're the directors and the writers and such. It's great writing. So like that's a big part of
Yeah.
my job. I'm like, this is good. Like, and it's funny too because sometimes you get scripts and you're like, I don't understand what like where like what they want or what the where the comedy of this character is, but I understand it with Herb right away. I'm like, I get this character. I know him. There's a lot of me I think within that as well. I'm like, as I was saying, I think Herb generally does want to do good. I think he has a really good heart, and I think he has a lot of awkwardness and anxiety and such,
Oh yeah.
which I do too. So I feel like I was kind of born to play that part, and the directors, to give them a lot of credit too. They've often been very encouraging of me to try stuff and to like improvise some things, and and to trust that what I'm doing, you know, to give me a bit of a runway to
Hmm.
experiment with things. And it's funny, I got a bit of a burn this past season. Uh, one of the directors, it was great because I'm like, I really try to maximize the screen time that I have because I want to make people laugh. I want people like to have a really good time when Herb comes on. I want people to really enjoy him. And so, and I'm just being, my clownish self.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm trying to like physical comedy and awkwardness and like what are all these different ways that I can manifest that in my body. And the director, she was like, for one take, she came over and she's like, for this again, can you give me like instead of milking the whole cow, can you just give me like baby cow instead? And I'm like, all right. So it's a compliment, but it's also a burn as well. But I'm like, okay, because it's like they don't have time for me to stretch out. It was like a 30-second scene. They don't, you can't stretch it out for 2 minutes
Oh
just
my
because I'm,
god.
I'm trying to like,
That's
ham
hysterical.
it up.
Umbrella Academy is one of those shows, a lot of shows that, was filming before the pandemic, and then you guys
Hmm.
had to go back
Yeah.
during the pandemic, which we're still in right now. What would
Hmm.
you say? I mean, besides all the safety measures, the protocols in place,
Hmm.
going back onto a show that you worked on before COVID, now going back with COVID being a
Hmm.
major factor, I mean, how did you take it as an actor? Was it unsettling? Was it scary? How did you, accept it?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think Netflix and the production did a really great job of trying to make it as safe as possible.
Mhm.
And so there was, 3 times, I remember it felt like actually like so much of my season was actually just going to set to get tested and then going back home. But that was it. Like that's, and that this was, we were actually, we were shooting well into the season before vaccines came out as well. So it
Wow.
was like thinking about it, I'm like, wow, like that's yeah, we there had to be a zero tolerance within that sense. Like if one person gets sick, there's so many dominoes that can fall within that, and then production's going to get shut down.
Yeah.
And here in Toronto, we were in a lockdown as well. So it's very vitally important that and we're so grateful that we're still able to work when so many industries were shut down. If we could do it safely, then that could maybe even be a model for other industries, perhaps, to slowly get back into doing things. So I think for me, my improv background, just the mindset, like I'm happy to work always,
Yeah.
and so I have to wear a mask and a face shield and go and get tested very often and have distancing and things like that. Well, of course, I mean I'd prefer I prefer it where we didn't have COVID and that
Of
wasn't a
course.
reality, but that was the fact. And for me, the improv mindset is like, okay, well, this is just the reality.
You just have to
Go with the
adjust.
flow.
Yeah.
You just got to adjust. You got to say yes to it, and because resisting it is just going to create so much, so much suffering in yourself. You're just going to, be cynical or grievances and like, but you're making yourself feel worse
Yeah.
than you need to be. And for me, there was so much more of just a gratitude of like we can still work, and we're creating content for people because we had no idea how long, you know, COVID's going to last for as
Hmm.
well. And obviously, so many people are at
And the
home
safety precautions are
streaming.
still in place on every set.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like we're all trying to navigate it here, and but the fact is that a crew the size or a team is as big as Umbrella is if one person goes down or like if something spreads. Oh, the other thing too, we had these like buzzer, we had these tags that we wear that if you became in like something like was it like 5 feet or something, or like a proximity of someone like tests positive, like they're able to track it, being like, oh, this person met up with this person for X amount of time. So
Wow.
it was that was very ingenious, actually.
Never
Uh,
heard of that. Yeah.
yeah. It was really, they again because you have to, because
Yeah.
if people start to go down, like if you miss a day of shooting, the amount of money that gets lost is insurmountable. And
Yeah, I totally understand. Uh,
yeah,
we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask
sure,
you a little bit more about Pogo.
yeah,
Was this your first time doing motion capture work? Was it with Pogo?
yeah.
What are your thoughts on motion capture? Do you like it more than the prosthetics?
Yeah.
Prosthetics are time consuming. You got to wear them.
Yeah.
When the conditions are rough outside, I can imagine it's just a big pain in the butt. Motion capture, it's exactly what it is. They just capture your movements and then they
Yeah.
CGI a body over you. What are your feelings towards motion capture?
Yeah. I mean, it's all good. I love it's easier. I mean, I show up and I'm like, great. I just have to put pants and the jacket on. I'm good. In prosthetic, I remember when I was playing Jeff the Gray on People of Earth, that was a 2 hour build every time I was on set.
Yeah.
So of course, and call times are generally really early because you're shooting for the duration of the day. So quite often you're looking at 12-hour plus days. And so of course I'd have to go in even earlier and sit and then they do the build. And I remember with Jeff in particular, uh, the prosthetic that I was wearing for Jeff, the nostrils of the character were actually above my nostrils. So I couldn't breathe through my nose. So they had to actually build in a bit of like, we couldn't glue it completely tight against my face because I needed like air to come
Hmm.
through my eyes, like the eye sockets. And my ears are completely covered. So I can't hear. And then when the goggles go in, when we're taking, like they fogged up super quick. So it was uncomfortable.
It sounds that
however,
way.
however, as I said, I was so grateful. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, I'm in a bit of discomfort. It's a long day, but for the things that I get to do, this is the best.
Yeah,
Like
you get to go
I
up there and
would
pretend and have fun.
exactly.
Can't ask for anything more.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much, Ken Hall. Guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out the Umbrella Academy. Season 3 just aired a little while ago. 3 full seasons are available on Netflix. Ken plays Herb and Pogo's body. So you definitely got to check out Ken. Ken, I want to thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing some of your stories. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share before we go?
Yeah, I would just want to say thanks very much for having me, and for people watching, thanks for being fans of the Umbrella Academy and fans of Herb and Pogo and such. It's really so lovely to meet fans and to hear how people appreciate the work that we do.
Hmm.
It is so much fun for me to do it on a set, but then later on, when it actually gets released, to hear feedback and then seeing some of the comments and such. It is just really lovely that it really resonates with people. So I can't do it when I have fans and vice versa, like so
Exactly.
I'm just very appreciative of all these opportunities, and to make people happy is
That's
a really
awesome.
great thing.
And you're a big fan favorite as well. That definitely counts for a lot. Thank you to our audience who's tuned in live and those who will be watching this later on. Again, thank you to our guest Ken Hall. The Umbrella Academy now on Netflix, 3 full seasons available. Until next time, on behalf of Ken and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Good night, everybody.